City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded February 6, 2024.
It's 2 o'clock. It's time to call to order the Police and Fire Commission of February 6, 2024. Welcome, and the first thing we're going to do on the roll call is to call the roll.
Moore.
Candy. Here.
Ostrowski.
Here.
Zenner.
Here.
Kershling.
Here. And Morozic is excused. Second item on the agenda is the President's report. It'll be short. What I wanted to take the time to say was that my term ends in April, and I have spoken to the mayor, and I have requested not to be reappointed. So I will not be with you anymore. So if you know of anybody who's interested in serving on the Police and Fire Commission, please have them contact the mayor, Mr. Wiesa, at 346-1570, or contact the city clerk's office if you need more information, 346-1569. And if that doesn't do it, stop down to City Hall, say hi to the folks, and ask them for information. So, moving right along, agenda item number 3 is approval of the minutes of January's meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as posted.
I will second that. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any comments or questions on the minutes from last month? Nice thick packet there. Candy did a nice job. Comments, questions? Nothing? All in favor of approving the minutes as they are, all say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 4 is the confirmation of bills. Mr. Ostrowski.
All righty. As you might notice, my handwriting changed on the approval section, and President Moore went over these, but he asked me to deliver the messages. Top one, the police department for the budget for the month of January. While it looks wacky, there is a problem with it. Near the bottom third, there's an item for $43,000. That should have been in capital expenses and not in operational. And so we'll lay the blame someplace, but we won't say where, you know.
And it's been corrected.
And been corrected. So with that, there's nothing else that really jumps out and stands out, other than I was going to ask the chief on the flock cameras. Is that an annual fee?
Yes, it's an annual fee. They prorated us this year because all 10 cameras got installed and were in working mode in about May or June. And so the annual cost is usually $28,000, but they charged us $15,000 for this year.
Thank you, Chief, for the explanation. With that, you'll notice in your packet you have two budgets, in the sense that you've got the one ending December 31st, and then you got the current one for January, so don't get confused in looking at it. The police department, I commend them. They come in at around 105, and I think there's some grants or something that's still popping up in there that might actually go into stay in the black for last year.
Correct.
Fire department, again, nothing outrageous other than fire hose for $30,000. Chief, could you explain that one?
Sure. I'm going to ask Assistant Chief Savard to come up and explain that. Right now, that $30,000 cost, also later on in the PFC's agenda, we'll discuss some additional information when it comes to fire hose and nozzles as well.
What would you like to know?
Well, I was just wondering, I understand that this is being split up in cost-wise.
Yep, so the total actually was $45,000, of which $30,000 came out of last year's, and then we have capital for this year for the extra $15,000 that's going to cover the rest of it. That is to replace our hose. Our hose has to be replaced by NFP standards every 10 years. So we're meeting some of the mark on some of our hose for the 10-year period. We're also making a switch to a smooth bore concept instead of a fog nozzle. And with that, nozzles and hose is a total package. So you need different hose to run with different nozzles. That decision is based on science, and we're following the science and the data that it assists our firefighters, makes it safer for them, and puts out fire more efficiently. So.
Okay, that's what I needed explained. Thank you.
Perfect.
And with that, you'll again see the two budgets, last year's and this year's. Last year's looks a little wacky, but if you consider there are some adjustments to be made, and the chief assures me we will not end up at 206%.
Correct. We were about $53,000 in the black.
Okay. And the last was the ambulance service. It's been a long time since I saw bills for the ambulance service for 3 items. I mean, Joe, were you on vacation or something?
I kept them under control.
So nothing there. And again, the 2 budgets, if you need to see what happened through the end of the year. And Joe again has told me that based on his things, there's some adjustments that they will come in A-OK. In fact, they returned money.
4% under budget.
4% under budget. So with that, I would like to recommend we approve the bills as submitted.
Okay.
Kirschling, second.
We have a second by Kirschling. Any other questions or comments on the budgets? The bills, I should say, not budgets. Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries, and that was the confirmation of bills. Moving right along, agenda item number 5 is update on contract bargaining with the Stevens Point Police Department Officers Organization. Chief.
Correct. Their contract recently ended right at the end of 2023. We went into mediation. We came up with an agreement. It went to the union last night. They voted to approve it, and we'll be going to ratification with the committees and council in the next 2 weeks.
Very good. Good to hear that that is almost done. Any questions for the chief on that at the moment? Okay, then we're going to move on to agenda item number 6, which is the police chief report.
Very short. Notes of interest, Pastor Brian Better joined with us for the Portage County Chaplain Program. So he was added to our on-call list in case we have any type of critical incident where we feel that we need a pastor to assist either our men and women of the department or the possible victims of a crime. With the poll workers being trained, Lieutenant Johnson conducted 5 short de-escalation training to all the city poll workers that are coming on for, I believe it's February 20th is the primary. January 5th, School Resource Officer Joe Quisler retired after 26 years with the Stevens Point Police Department. And then on January 9th, Assistant Chief Williams did a promotion process, and Sergeant Justin Klein was promoted to lieutenant, and Lead Officer Austin Lee was promoted to sergeant, and they were sworn in on February 1st. And on January 31st, Lieutenant John Moss retired after 25-plus years of service with the Stevens Point Police Department as well. The only other thing I want to bring up is a lot of people have heard about January 23rd, where there was a disturbance at the Portage County Library. I am working with the sheriff. It is kind of a unique situation. It's in our jurisdiction, but it's run by the county. I'm going to be going to Spaces and Properties today at 3:30, their meeting as well. The sheriff and I are trying to come up with solutions on what we can do to try to prevent something like this ever happening again. Chief's report.
Chief, how many chaplains do we have all? Dozen?
6 of them right now.
Oh, 6. Are they the same ones that work for the fire department?
It's all of Portage County.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for the chief? I'll make a motion to accept the report and place it on file.
I'll second it.
Second by Zenner. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the report and placing it on file, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 7, discussion with possible action to approve probationary firefighter paramedics Nathan Mack, Tyler Kruger, and Naomi Hionis to the position of firefighter paramedic with the completion of their probation effective January 16th, 2024. All of them January 16?
Correct.
Okay. Chief?
So it was my oversight and on my part, but I am looking for approval of probationary firefighter paramedics Nathan Mack, Tyler Kruger, and Naomi Hionis to the position of firefighter paramedic within the Stevens Point Fire Department effective January 16th of 2024. All three of them would be the same date.
I make a motion to approve probationary firefighter paramedic Nathan Mack, Tyler Kruger, and Naomi Hionis to the position of firefighter paramedic on completion, which is already postmarked January 16th, 2024.
I will second that motion.
That's with all the standard background checks and everything and all of that.
No, this is actually, they have completed their 1 year of probation with
Okay.
the department and meeting all of those standards.
Very good. Any other questions or comments for the chief? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 8, discussion with possible action to approve probationary deputy fire marshal, emergency management coordinator Justin Malin to the position of deputy fire marshal, emergency management coordinator with the completion of his probation effective February 7th, 2024.
Correct. Our management positions are a little different in the Stevens Point Fire Department than our union positions, where our management personnel serve a 6-month probation, not a 1-year probation. So I would be looking at approval of a probationary deputy fire marshal / emergency management coordinator Justin Malin upon completion of everything effective February 7th, coming off of probation of this month.
Kirschling making a motion to approve the probationary deputy fire marshal emergency management coordinator Justin Malin to the position of deputy fire marshal emergency management coordinator with the completion of his probation effective February 7th, 2024.
Second on that.
Seconded by Ostrowski. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 9, discussion with possible action to approve a memorandum of agreement between the City of Stevens Point and the Stevens Point Fire Union Local 484 regarding instructor pay. Chief, is that the one that you handed out at the beginning of the meeting?
That is correct.
Chief? So that's the memorandum of agreement that you have before you. Take a moment and go over it if you like.
And the only paragraph in question is the one bold, instructor while on duty. That is the paragraph that will be changing in the labor agreement between the City of Stevens Point and Local 484.
What was the change, Chief?
The change, and I can explain, is that prior to this, the contract stated that the member appointed by the chief while on duty must instruct the 40 hours of instructional time during the calendar year and submit for the pay. The question at hand, both the language did not define the date on which the paperwork had to be submitted to the division chief of training by. Both parties were using the intent, the prior intent, and past practice. And for a best practice concept and defining the issues that were brought forward with both the local and the department, we felt it was important that we define all of those dates. So what you see in front of you has been agreed upon by myself and the city attorney and also the local, and that's why you will see the local signatures already on the paperwork. But basically what it states is they have now defined November 1st to November 1st to do their 40 hours of on-duty instructional time. Then at that point, they will have from November 1st till December 1st to submit said paperwork to the division chief of training, and the city will have the ability to pay out that training pay incentive between December 1st and the end of the year. So it defines those dates with the new language.
It just straightens up the situation.
Yes, and I will tell you, being a chief officer and prior to being a chief officer, this always, every year at the end of the year seems to be an issue with somebody. It ends up being a grievance at step 1, step 2. We try to resolve it, and this time we're going to resolve it with actual language and defining dates.
Chief, do all of your dates always go from the same month to the same month of the first of the same day?
No.
Instead of November 1st to the end of October?
October 31st, midnight or something, yeah.
How come that is like that?
It's a strange, because the other contracts in the city, and I know you had the city attorney approve this already, but a lot of the other ones read the language where it's midnight the 31st of the previous month. Is there a specific reason? I was going to ask the same question, Joe.
The reason being is that way they have the right to still submit that November 1st date. And then we have till that December 1st date to receive the actual close of business, to receive that, that paperwork to the division chief.
Well, that's what you say here, though, is it goes until no later than December 1st. In theory, you could have from November 1st to July 1st, and then they still have until December 1st to put their payment, their stuff in. It's not really that big of a deal. It's just normally you go for a year, you go
October 31st.
All right.
We gave them that extra day.
Fine. I'm good with that then. If that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes.
Everybody's in agreement with it?
Yes. Everybody is in agreement with it.
Agreeably confused. Anyone else have questions? We need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between the City of Stevens Point and the Stevens Point Fire Union Local 484 regarding instructor pay as presented herein.
Okay.
I second that.
And we have a second. Any further questions or comments on this document as presented? Seeing none, all in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on. Chief, is this the one that you want me to sign for you?
No, I have the
Got
originals
another one?
set aside that I'll have you sign after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 10, discussion with possible action to approve and accept the 100% funded 2024 Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant for $34,205 toward nozzles and hose. This must be the furthering discussion you were discussing earlier.
That is correct.
Please continue.
So the Stevens Point Fire Department recently received a $34,205 grant from Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation to ensure local first responders have the necessary equipment to keep community members and themselves safe. The grant will be used to purchase firefighting nozzle, shutoffs, tips, standpipe bag kits, and flow test kits, fulfilling the critical needs within the department. By providing our department with the new firefighter nozzle shutoffs, tips, standpipe bag kits, and flow testing kits, our first responders will be able to meet the industrial standards, increase firefighting efficiency, and help the people of the Stevens Point during emergent situations. And what I want to say about this grant that we received for $34,205 from Firehouse Public Safety Foundation is that we had members of the department work very hard and very diligently on this. Chief Zavara and Chief Hageman evaluated all the equipment and hose that was needed and put together what actually the cost of this grant should be. And then Chief Hageman and Lieutenant Zander went ahead and wrote this grant, and we were successful in getting it. So I really would like to commend those 3 individuals for getting us the additional $34,000 towards that hose. This is going to further not only the hose and nozzles and the firefighter safety, but the consistency throughout the firehouse. All 4 of our fire apparatuses are going to be have the same nozzles and the same hose on them from the front line rig out to the backup rigs, and everything will be consistent for our members. No matter if one is down for service or not, they'll be able to deploy a backup apparatus the same way they would a primary apparatus due to this grant.
You'll have a better way of judging when these wear out too, because I mean, you'll all have a similar starting time on it, right?
Correct, and everything is tracked, everything is tested. We've also found out that we have standards that have to be met with not only our hose, but our nozzles as well for testing. And so we've started a new program as well with that, and have motor pump operator Thompson taking over that program and going to run that within the department. So at this time, I'm just looking for and it is 100% funded. There is no match. This is 100% funded. I'm just looking for a motion to accept this.
Okay, looking for approval to accept the grant.
I'll move that the Stevens Point Fire Department go ahead and accept the 100% funded 2024 Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant for $34,205 for the use for nozzles and hoses.
Very good.
Kirschling, second.
We have a second by Kirschling. Any other comments or questions?
I have a couple of things to say about this. Number one is we hear on advertisements and commercials of how they give back to the community. This is a real example. I didn't realize that they give this much back to the community. And secondly, I want to commend the officers, your team, the chiefs. Not only with this grant, the citizens of Stevens Point know that the fire department and the police department, they do work on grants throughout the year. They get some of them, sometimes they don't. But these are extra funds that are alleviating taxpayer dollars, and I want to commend those folks that are working towards these grants. So thank you, all of you.
And I'd like to just add to that, and of course, commend Firehouse Subs. That's an incredible program to set up.
Yeah.
It really is.
Anyone else have any comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 11, discussion with possible action to approve the Stevens Point Fire Department moving forward with a 2024 referendum for 9 additional firefighter paramedic positions. Chief, you have a presentation.
Yes, I do.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. On behalf of the Stevens Point Fire Department, Local 484, and as chief of the department, I'd like to thank every commissioner up here today for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about a potential referendum moving forward to the fall ballot and letting the people to decide on the department's request. Before we get started, I think it's important to understand that the elected officials at City Hall, including the mayor, the comptroller, all of the other department heads within the city of Stevens Point, and Commissioner Mrozek, who's not able to be here today, are in support of this referendum. The SPFD continues to move ahead. And with moving ahead, we are involved in many different organizations. We try to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to all of these organizations and set the example. As you can see, The Stevens Point Fire Department is involved with many different organizations, just to list some of them here on this slide. Our members are involved with their executive boards. Some of them are presidents of these associations, and they truly lead by example, setting the bar high for other departments to compare to. But with that, I have a concern. All of our members are expected to know our core values and the price of doing business when it comes to professionalism, respect, integrity, and compassion, and excellence in all we do. We also have a mission statement that we review every 5 years when it comes to putting together our new strategic plan within the fire department and moving forward. But unfortunately, at this point, the Stevens Point Fire Department has come to a critical point where I don't believe our mission statement is going to be fulfilled or be able to be fulfilled in the future with the number of personnel we currently have in the department. And what I want to point out is it talks about training the community, training our members, educating our community through risk reduction. As you'll see, I don't believe that our members are getting the proper training. I don't think our community is going to be able to continue to get the education through Pub Ed. And I truly don't believe that the risk reduction programs that we have out there are going to be able to continue unless we look at additional staffing. Now, what is the ask? The ask is for 9 line staff positions. 9 firefighter paramedic positions within the Stevens Point Fire Department. That's what we are looking to go to referendum for. Why? Why, you may ask? It's very simple. We are trying to promote a safe, healthy environment for not only our members, but for our community. And with that being said, I want to show you a simple 4-minute presentation that the International Association of Firefighters put together, and showing that staffing levels on a normal fire apparatus should be at a minimum of 4 in residential areas of communities, 5 on each apparatus in the downtown area like we have on Main Street, and 6 in larger cities. So with that, I'd like you just to sit back and watch the presentation for a few minutes.
You may have heard about NFPA 1710, the industry standard for career fire departments. But what is it? And what does it mean for our community? Your house is on fire. It's your worst nightmare. In just 3 minutes, a fire can grow 16 times larger than when it started.
So I'm going to have this presentation stopped a few times throughout, and I want to point out some key things. A fire will grow 16 times within 3 minutes, which means that first arriving apparatus, it is critical to be able to make a stop on that fire or to be able to do a quick search and rescue. And right now, out at Station 2 on Truck 22, the normal staffing only allows for 2 people. If that fire has not been self-ventilated prior to this, we will be waiting until that additional apparatus comes from across town to do that fire suppression or to do that search and rescue.
And it continues to grow bigger and faster every second. Once the clock starts ticking, there's a shrinking window of opportunity to save lives and property. You want a full crew of firefighters to put it out quickly, or you may suffer a catastrophic loss. But how many are enough? 15, 20, 40?
And you can see here when they question this, 15, 20, 40 on staff at any given time. Our max, nobody off, fully staffed on a day-to-day basis, right now is currently 13. 13.
How do you decide? Fortunately, there's an internationally recognized industry standard. It's called NFPA 1710, and it's based on scientific evidence and research that establishes how many firefighters are needed to put out each fire and rescue anyone trapped. At a fire scene, you want a firefighter doing every job that needs to be done to save you and your house. And at a fire, there's a lot that needs to be done, like stretching the hose, hooking to a hydrant, searching for trapped people, venting the hot gases, and much more. For a low-hazard single-family house fire, NFPA 1710 specifies a minimum of 15 firefighters dispatched in the
we only
initial
have
alarm.
a max of 13.
At an open-air strip shopping center or garden apartment fire, the standard specifies a minimum of 28 firefighters dispatched in the first alarm. And for fires in high-rise buildings at least 7 stories tall, the data show that the initial dispatch should be for a minimum of 43 firefighters.
Now with that, that's important to realize. On the initial dispatch for a residential structure fire, we should have 15 people en route. For anything downtown, in the downtown area, we should have 20+ personnel en route on the initial page. And anything with 7 stories or greater, the initial page should be for 43+ personnel. Now I know some of you may say, this is Stevens Point and those things don't happen, but I'm here to tell you these things have all happened just while I've been a chief officer at this department. We have seen residential structure fires. We have seen structure fires in 3 to 5 story buildings. And we have seen fires, working fires, in 7+ story buildings like the Briggs Street high-rise in the past year or 2, with people trapped, fully involved rooms, search and rescue going on, and the initial page was for 10 people, not 43+.
And that fire department should send additional firefighters to situations that are beyond the capability of the initial alarm. When considering crew size on each engine and truck responding to a fire, the standard says that in low-hazard response areas like residential neighborhoods,
this is every residential area
on
in
each
Stevens
fire
Point.
engine and truck is 4. In areas with a high number of incidents or geographic restrictions like narrow
This is like
roads,
our downtown area
single-access bridges
on
or
Main Street.
islands, a minimum of 5 firefighters on each fire engine and ladder truck is required. And in dense urban areas with high hazard occupancies,
I'm also
like
realistic
high-rise
knowing
buildings,
that
the minimum
this doesn't
number of
truly
firefighters
exist
on
in
each
Stevens
fire engine
Point.
or truck is 6.
So as you can see, a minimum staffing levels should be a 4 on each one of our fire apparatuses. If we're responding into the downtown area to commercial or industrial areas, it should be 5. And currently we are running 3 on our engine and 2 on our truck company.
Regardless of the type of property, 1710 also sets the time of arrival on scene within 4 minutes for the first engine with 4 firefighters. The 1710 standard for both response time and crew size is based on scientific evidence, not opinion. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, known as NIST, and its partners conducted extensive research to document the optimal crew sizes for various types of structures. As a decision maker, you and firefighters share a common goal. Everyone gets out alive. So when a house is on fire,
So it's real simple. What are we asking for? We're asking for 9 more line personnel at the Stevens Point Fire Department. Why? We just explained why. But more importantly, we're more than just an ambulance or a fire service. And I think that's important that people understand that. As you can see, we do many things when it comes to EMS. We do many things when it comes to fire suppression and fire investigations. but we also offer special operations when it comes to rope rescue, confined space, trench and collapse rescue, swift water, ice water, and vehicle extrication. We also do fire prevention, and that's part of that risk reduction. Last year we did 1,878 inspections just in the city of Stevens Point. We also do a lot of public education, because public education keeps those fires down, and it keeps people in the community safe. Now, the last time the city of Stevens Point added a tier of firefighters. And what is a tier of firefighters? And why is the Stevens Point Fire Department asking for 9? Because every 3 firefighters equals 1 tier. Because what we have to do is we have to hire 3 people to have 24/7, 365 coverage. The last time we added a tier of firefighters to the Stevens Point Fire Department was the fall of 1981. In 1982, those 3 firefighters saw their first year of service. And that year, the city of Stevens Point responded to 1,988 calls for service. Last year in 2023, we went to 5,538 calls for service. Yet the city of Stevens Point has not put on any additional firefighters.
So that's, just to be clear, that's in 43 years, that's 4 times, roughly 4 times the amount of calls with the same amount of people. Roughly?
Roughly.
Maybe 3 times?
I would agree with 3 times as many calls with the same amount of people. And not only is it the same amount of people and 3 times the call volume, but the education that we're expecting these employees to have now versus 43 years ago, and everything else on a day-to-day operation that has increased as well. The factors that impact that call volume. Since 1981, we've had over 2,000 buildings built in the city of Stevens Point. Homes, commercial, and industrial setting. We have an aging population, and the utilization of 911 has changed. Society's view on 911 has changed, and they want that immediate care, not only for EMS and fire, but for those service calls. And that's what's important here, and I'd like to point out. Our service calls in 2023 went up 41.82% alone. Those calls for service are like when a smoke detector chirps and the battery goes dead. A CO detector is not working correctly. They want their house checked out for a certain reason. Those service calls, we are there to provide a community service. I have been preaching since becoming the chief that we will have a servant leadership style towards our community. Our members have followed that, and our community has seen it, and they're continuing to use that as effective the numbers are. 41.82% increase just this last year in service calls.
Chief.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at your personnel right now. You're identified as having approved membership of 48, and you're funded for 46?
That is correct.
So does this 9 get added to the approved, or 9 added to the funded?
At this time, we are looking for the approval to go to referendum for the funding of these positions. If the referendum passes, we would be coming back in front of the Police and Fire Commission. We would also be coming in front of, Corey, I'm on a mind blank. Give me what committee?
Finance?
No, personnel, sorry. Personnel, and then in front of Common Council in December for the actual positions to be created. Right now, we are asking for the funding.
So I want to clarify, the referendum you're looking to pursue is for funding for additional firefighters, not authorizing nine firefighters.
Correct.
Okay.
It is the funding for 9 firefighters at this time. If the referendum were to pass in November, we would come back in front of PFC and everyone else for that actual increase in staffing.
Okay.
Call volume comparisons. Where do we sit compared to the other departments in the local area? Now, why did we pick these departments? We went strictly off of what the city pay plan and what the city of Stevens Point looked at as comparable cities in the state of Wisconsin when we just went through the Baker-Tilly program. And as you can see, last year in 2023, we had 5,538 calls. We have 39 line staff. And when you average that out, that's 142 calls per line staff personnel. I think where it really breaks it down and takes it home is to show that with our line personnel of being 39, 13 per crew, each member is responding to 142 of those calls. Even with the 9 personnel, we would end up only behind Wisconsin Rapids at this time if we add 9 more.
So real quickly, from what I've seen so far, it doesn't even seem like 9 is enough. It seems like the first group of calls, first call that comes in, we're adequately staffed, but on the second call, we're not adequately staffed. Is that
correct? And I'll explain that here in a little bit, but you are hitting it.
Okay.
So again, if we add the 9 personnel, we would drop to 115.4 calls per person, and you could see that that would put us just ahead of Marshfield and just behind Wisconsin Rapids, even with the 9 additional positions. But if you're asking if 9 positions are enough, my answer to you is no, it's not. But I have to be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers, and I also have to make sure that I'm giving the community the best bang for the buck. And at this point, I feel 9 is the appropriate number to move forward with for the referendum. And why I say that is because when we look at cost effectiveness and unit utilization, we're able to, at least with 3 people on each apparatus, make that initial fire suppression attack, make that initial search and rescue, make that initial whatever decision has to be done operationally and tactically. But right now, we can't do that with all of our apparatuses here in Stevens Point. We only have 1 staffed that way, and that's Engine 1 at Station 1. In 2023, firefighter availability, and this will speak on behalf of what you just asked, Commissioner Kirschling. We had over 4,000 ambulance calls for service. 24% of the time, 2 or more of those calls were at the same time. When 2 or more ambulance calls for service happen at the same time, it reduces our staffing levels to dangerous levels to be able to respond to any type of fire or subsequent call. And I would just like to point out, and I will show you in the Chief's report coming up for the month of January. In the month of January of 2024, last year in 2023, we had 5 calls where we had 3 ambulances out at the same time, reducing our staffing levels to 4 for a fire. This year, we've already had it happen 12 times. I also know there's been a lot of discussion that we've been involved with a lot of auto aid agreements, a lot of mutual aid agreements. And what is mutual aid? Or MABUS, mutual aid box alarm systems. And I know there are a lot of people concerned that we may be sending our firefighter paramedics outside the city to respond to those calls. This will show you that exact situation and show you that a majority of the time, that's not the case. Matter of fact, 80.9% of the time, those calls are right downtown Stevens Point in the local Stevens Point area. 1.1% of the time, those calls are in Park Ridge. 2.1% of the time, we're actually sending our apparatuses outside the city or the village of Park Ridge to respond to those auto aid or mutual aid calls. And 15.9% of the time, we are taking our lieutenant off of our fire apparatus, sending them out in Car 5 to be a field supervisor somewhere in the county for additional hands. Now, our 24-hour breakdown, because everybody knows we work a 24-hour shift. We work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 4 days off. When you break down the average call volume, that's 15.2 calls per day. The average call takes 51.03 minutes. That's 12.9 hours our members are out on the road serving this community nonstop. Now, I'm realistic. I know you're not going to get breakfast, lunch, and supper, and they know that as well. But at some point, they need to be able to get 3 meals throughout the day. Each one of those meals are a half hour. And then I've got to look at the mental health aspect for my members within the department. Now, I'm not asking for uninterrupted time. We all know this is going to be interrupted throughout the day as those calls come in. But the standards say 6 hours. Well, when you do the math, that simply leaves us 3.6 hours left in a day to complete all the rest of the objectives and responsibilities of a firefighter paramedic. With those 3.6 hours remaining in the day, you can see that 2.3 of those hours are already ate up on fire inspections. But they also must maintain a minimum of 220 hours annually of fire training, 30 hours annually of EMS training. They have to complete their special operations training, station maintenance, vehicle maintenance. We have to go out and we do fire prevention and public education. That's important. We have to be the standby confined space team for all the local confined space teams in the area, like Pixel, UWSP, and many others. We have many members who manage programs or sit on multiple committees, making sure that everything is running as a fine-tuned machine at the Stevens Point Fire Department. Everyone will see that when you do that math, everything I just talked about, that gives them 1.3 hours to complete that in a 24-hour period. Now, we can talk about it or we can really show you reality. Here's reality. We get called to a working fire at 5700 EM Cops Drive, one of the biggest cold storage areas in central Wisconsin. We respond and we are 100% staffed, minimum staffing 10. We also have our duty chief coming from home. They make an initial attack on the roof fire. And at the same time, there's a residential fire across town at 248 Washington Avenue. Our duty chief, truck 1 with 2 personnel, and med 2 with 2 personnel respond across town. A delayed response, and when they get there, they don't have enough personnel to make an initial interior attack. They have to team up with Plover and Hull to make that suppression happen. Also during that time, they had to take care of an individual, a homeowner, who came down with smoke inhalation. And due to being so short-staffed on that scene, we ended up with a major injury causing a large workman's comp case to one of our own firefighter paramedics. Staffing is critical. Now, what do I want our members of the PFC to take away from this? I've given each one of you a laminated talking card to be able to inform the community, and this is what I'm trying to make sure everyone understands. With this referendum, moving forward, we are asking for the funding at this time. We are asking the PFC for the approval to go forward with a fall referendum for funding for 9 positions. If that funding passes in a referendum, we would be coming back to the PFC personnel and Common Council for the approval of those 9 positions in December to start 1/1 of '25. The referendum would cost $41 per 100,000. The average house in the city of Stevens Point is $194,000. That's $79 if that is your house. That equals $3.04 per paycheck per year. We haven't added staffing since 1982. At that time, the call volume or calls for service was 1,988 calls. Last year, we responded to 5,538. Fire calls were up 17%. EMS calls were up 11% last year. We added 574 calls just last year for service. This is the most important bullet point of all of them. The mandations and overtime. This is the mental health, the recruitment retention, and the fatigue that my members are seeing currently. We had 539 24-hour overtime days in 2022. We had 93 mandations. 539 overtime days. If that was a factory and we were working 8-hour shifts, that'd be over 1,500 overtime shifts occurring in 1 year. 93 of those 539 days were mandation. What is a mandation? An employee has the right to refuse overtime the first time around. Has the right to refuse overtime a second time around. And when it comes back the third time around, they are mandated to work. Now, if they worked Christmas Eve and planned on having Christmas Day off, they're now going to work. And it has happened, where they worked the 24th, 25th, and 26th because of the schedule. They work a 72. If they wanted the 4th of July off that weekend, or maybe just that Saturday, now they're going to work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and have that following Monday off. They may not have the opportunity to see birthdays. We all know that. They may not have the opportunity to see significant events. We understand that in our line and profession. But when you're mandated to work on a day that you weren't supposed to work and didn't voluntarily take the overtime, that can become a struggle. And it has become a struggle for our department and the staffing that we've experienced the shortages of. The commission has seen it in our exit interviews. Some of our personnel didn't move on to different professions. They moved on to different departments. And one of the main reasons was exactly this: the overtime and the mandations and the struggles they were having with their families. In 2022, we paid out $863,940.14 in overtime. That's 295% over what was budgeted for that year. 295% over what was budgeted. This referendum is going to cost $967,638 for those 9 positions on a 2025 firefighter pay scale with benefits. We see a potential savings the first year of $211,000 if we're given this opportunity. And lastly, don't take my word for it. You saw the international stance on whether we should have 4 or 5 personnel on each apparatus. I'm just asking for 3. Right now we have 2. I'm asking for 3. I'm asking to be able to do fire suppression. I'm asking to be able to do search and rescue. That's what I'm asking to do. Keep the community safe. With that, I'd like to open it up to any questions and just say thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Okay, do you have any questions from the audience? Yes, go ahead. Please come up to the microphone, state your name and address, all the fun things.
I have some questions for you.
Mary Nebo in District 7 Alder, 5718 Sandpiper Drive, Stevens Point. Every year when we do the budgets for the city, I talk about how important it is not to tax people like myself on a fixed income out of our homes. This is something I'm willing to pay for. Absolutely willing to have my taxes go up. So when I call 911, each minute doesn't feel like an eternity before they come. Having had that happen once, I know what it's like. You stand down the driveway and you hope you see the lights and hear the siren. It's worth $82 a year for me. Especially at my age, I'm the one that's going to be calling 911 a lot more often than somebody who's 19 or 20. It's important to me to know these guys, police and fire, are going to be there. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I couldn't share Mary's comments anymore, so I'm in that same group, Mary. And as I look around Stevens Point is an aging community. We're proud of it, we like it, but you know what, as they say, our city limit signs, we don't even change the numbers, we just change the years. But there is more and more people needing it. I can relate back personally, I can remember when in 1967, I had a call for an ambulance for a parent. 1 ambulance, 1 driver. It was a station wagon, extended station wagon. We had to wait till a police officer in the area showed up to help load my family member. I don't want that these days. And the chief said something that was very important. What we asked the fire service and the police department to do would never have been asked 30 years ago. It never would have been asked. Believe it or not, I'm not that old, but I can remember the firehouse on 2nd Street, which became a recycling center for a short time. But, you know, it's just that if there's something in my taxes I'm going to pay for, if there's a reason why I stay in Stevens Point, it's because of emergency services. I don't want to live 18 miles from town on some back road and need an ambulance or a police officer. I want that now. And I admire what our departments have done. When I came on this commission almost 10 years ago, we had this problem already shaping up then. And I said if I could do anything for it, I would. But I think this is time where we need to at least lay it out to the public and let them decide. But I think we need to push for it, because we can't keep going as is. Try raising your family today like you did 20 years ago. Well, these departments are raising us, and they can't do it with the same, with the added demands that we're putting on them, plus what we expect out of them. I can remember when you hired a firefighter, he also painted houses on the side because he couldn't make enough money as a firefighter, so he painted houses on the side. Now I look at what they're expected to do and expected to train, and their EMTs on top of it. My God, what more are we asking of them? So, Chief, thank you for this presentation. I think it's something long overdue that needed to be presented.
Thank you.
Mr. Kirschling.
I have a couple of questions. So when I had said before, what I was picking up in your presentation is our line 1 people that are going out, it's adequate. From what I'm seeing on your card here, I was wrong. We still don't have enough on line 1, and if we don't have enough on line 1, we don't have enough on line 2 if there are 2 or more calls simultaneously. Was I wrong on that?
Correct. So to actually we don't meet the standards for the first out response, let alone the second or third response.
Okay, I missed that.
And what we're saying is, I'm not even asking to get to those standards. I'm asking simply just to have enough to be able to do operations and tactics, like I said, be fiscally responsible for the taxpayers' money and only ask for what we need to get by at this point.
My second question is, it cost $864,000 is what we paid in overtime last year, and then it's going to cost $967,000. That's roughly $100,000. This is a two-part question. Number one, you have a savings here of $211,000. That doesn't add up. There must be some more money in there. For the taxpayers, where are you coming up with your 211?
Well, realistically, we have to look at, there's still going to be overtime, and we're still going to have staffing shortages here and there. The 967,000 plus is for the 9 positions.
Okay.
The $864,000 that you're discussing is the overtime. We still have approximately $255,000 to $258,000 budgeted for overtime. We know that there's still going to be overtime, but when you looked at the 539 days of overtime, if you take that, even if we still had 1 person on overtime a day, and you took that 539 minus the 365, and you took that second position, because remember, we're going to increase staffing and we're going to also add a buffer there. We know that we'll be able to reduce potentially not having to have 2 people on overtime, but still have 1. That's that cost savings. That's that cost saving, averaging the 100% firefighter wage on overtime for those overtime days. And again, that's a potential savings. We won't know those data points, or I won't know that information honestly until 2027. Because in 2025, if we get this and everything is approved, we will onboard these 9 positions through potentially 2 academies. And then in 26, with being fully staffed with these 9 additional positions, we would see how it plays out, and I wouldn't have that data till 2027.
We were short in 2022, like let's just say in October. Well, how many positions were we short? I don't recall.
Prior to the first of this year,
something like that.
Prior to the first of this year, we were 4 short. Those 4 positions have been filled as of January 8th. They started their academy. I will be given an update in my fire chief's report that their graduation date from the academy is actually this Friday, February 9th. They will spend 2 swings as a third, and then start as minimum staffing in March. We will be fully staffed for the first time in the Stevens Point Fire Department since 2015.
And you still, if I'm hearing you right, after we're fully staffed, you're still anticipating overtime.
I'm still anticipating overtime because I can't predict having not only earned time off, but people who call in sick, family medical leave for potentially baby leave or other surgical issues. We also have work comp cases. So there's always going to be that overtime. We're just going to alleviate some of the burden.
So is this overtime that you anticipate, is this, do you think, going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, $20,000? I mean, what kind of additional overtime do you think we're going to have? Because that's important to this. I think to the taxpayers of the city of Stevens Point is it's a chunk of money. Safety is obviously the most important, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, if hiring more people alleviates that overtime and we're getting better service, well,
The problem is I can't predict the future. I don't know what that number is.
okay. But you anticipate there will be?
Yes, there is going to be a savings.
Okay. That's all the questions I have right now.
Okay. Mr. Zenner?
You started your presentation with the question, this was the ask, and this is a big ask. I'm going to be a Debbie Downer, I'm sure, but I guess I look at this as kind of like what comes first, the chicken or the egg. This referendum that we're pursuing looks to fund 9 positions, or I should say additional positions within the fire department, and we've identified a number, but that's the rub. We have not gone through the process of adding positions, and to clarify that, the finance of this referendum is not under the authority of the Police and Fire Commission. Whatever vote, if we were to have one today, is nothing but ceremonial. That falls under the finance and then onto council, and then eventually it would go to a referendum that the public would decide. If we were to increase our personnel, that would come to the Police and Fire Commission, and we would make a decision on it from here. Now, that's not to dispute what you're identifying is potentially 9. I don't even like to use that number because we haven't had that conversation yet. There's several conversations that would go into that point of deciding what that number should be. Even there was some conversation here that it should be more. We don't know. We haven't had that conversation. And that's the rub where I say, what comes first, chicken or the egg? My opinion, we should be having a conversation with the Police and Fire Commission to determine what that number is before we walk down this path of going to a referendum. That being said, the costs that are associated with, and I guess my concern, some of it falls under the purview of the Police and Fire Commission, some not. I know we have had conversations with the mayor, you said, the comptroller, and they're in support of this, other department heads. Frankly, I can't imagine any department head would step in front of this and say no. That being said, I'd also say there isn't another department head within the city that doesn't have needs within their own agencies, possibly as critical as the fire department. That's not to take anything away from that. Again, that's not a concern of the Police and Fire Commission. However, there is one agency that is, and it's no mystery. I've worked there, so obviously there may be a sense of bias with it, but the Stevens Point Police Department has for several years been sitting at a position of authorized 49 personnel, funded 46. Concerns that I would have with this is what happens to other city departments. We move forward with this, everything goes according to what our hopes are. Do those other departments, or in this case the police department, take a back seat? I guess that's a question down the line to a young man sitting in the back of the galley here. Do we suddenly look at police department or any of the other departments? They're going to have to wait a considerable amount of time before those positions can be held. That's not to take away from the need that we're talking about in the presentation. You certainly pointed that out, but that's a concern for me. Another concern I have, you presented through capital some very significant capital requests identified as needs. That includes Fire Station 1 upgrade or expansion, but we already have Fire Station 2. I know you're looking at a Fire Station 3, Fire Station 4. If this was a need when we're looking at the positions currently approved as 48, 9 firefighters, I mean, you're looking at, I'm not a mathematician, but I think that's about a 20% increase. Does that need now become critical? And now is that another added cost above what we're looking at in a referendum? Overtime, I get the overtime, but quite frankly, if you're going to increase your standards and you're going to increase the numbers, I don't see the overtime going down. Well, you know, just scheduling, having experience with the overtime budget, simply scheduling on a holiday for adequate staffing is going to increase. So I don't see the reduction there. I have way too many questions myself on what type of infrastructure increases we're looking at. What are the hidden costs, I guess? You know, not that we're trying to, we don't know. You even said that yourself. We can't predict what that is. I think to take a longer view to determine what that number of firefighters we need to increase. How can the city support that with monies that don't come from this referendum? But again, we're not, and that's my rub, we're not here having that conversation. We're here having a conversation of whether to go forward with a referendum to fund what we're talking about is 9 positions, but we don't know that yet, and it hasn't even been approved. I'm kind of the feeling I would rather, if I'm going to buy a car, I want to take it for a test drive. I want to identify what I'm buying first, and right now, I don't feel we have, and I think there's too many questions concerning that before we move forward. That being said, again, this is a ceremonial vote if we do it. I certainly support you, you know I do, and some of the things I've already talked about, Chief, is not a surprise because we had that conversation already and want to be as transparent as possible. I support your endeavor to move to the appropriate body to do a vote on a referendum, but I got to be as open as possible. I don't support increasing the personnel at the fire department as it stands now. That's not to say with further conversations through the appropriate body, us, to see if that increase in personnel is the way to move. I would rather have seen that first. I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to take a moment and make a few comments myself. This is a big issue, and it seems to me that it's being brought to us out of order. You've brought us a solution, and we haven't had a time to discuss all of the options out there. I think this goes much farther than just 9 positions for the fire department. 30 years ago, we decided that we needed to put paramedics and firemen together, and it made a great idea. And it has worked for the community and improved things. Maybe it's time to look at that and say that's not working anymore. And maybe we need to go back to a regular firehouse and a regular ambulance system and split them up. We haven't discussed that, so we don't know the answer to that. We have looked at one solution to being short-staffed and undermanned in the firehouse. We also have, over the years that I've been on police and fire, have talked about our fire department buildings themselves being undersized for all of the equipment that we have. Take 2 ambulances out of each one of them and put them somewhere else, and maybe they're big enough again for another 10 years, 15 years. We don't know because we haven't looked at that. That's where I'm having a problem with this, because we haven't looked at options. We have jumped to one conclusion, that we need 9 more guys. That might be the right answer, but I don't know that. And because my job, being on the Police and Fire Commission, is to look at those options and try and figure out that answer. I can't support this right now. I know there's something has to be done, but I don't think we have looked at it in a logical manner citywide, because this is going to affect every department in the community. And it's not to say that this isn't something that needs to be addressed. It does. But I'm not sure this is the right way to address it at this time. That's where I'm at this point. Has anyone else got anything to say?
One thing, as the both of you are speaking, I was thinking about other options, and I know JB is thorough from working with him over the last how many years. What other options are there that you've come up with?
We have looked at SAFER grants and the potential of funding SAFER grants in the past. We even wrote a SAFER grant, but the city has assured me, even with the approval of the positions and then getting the funding through the SAFER grant, once the SAFER grant had ran its course, the city would no longer be able to fund the positions, and we would have to let those positions go. I, as the chief of the Stevens Point Fire Department, and in my leadership styles, feel that that's not an option. We don't bring people on to only turn around and let them go. We don't instill our core values and spin them up to speed and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these personnel only to let them go, in knowing we're going to let them go in less than 3 years.
So this is not a one-time payment. This is, you get these 9 positions and you're keeping them, and we need to make sure that the people of Stevens Point understand that very clearly. And frankly, your presentation does not make that clear. It makes it look like this is a one-time event and it just is done. But this is an ongoing, we start these positions and they will stay with the city, and more will be added after that.
Yeah, well, and where I was going is not so much from the grants. Has there been options that looking at, we reduce services? We're not as active and going out on all these different calls and all over the place, and now we just serve the city of Stevens Point. And if we just serve the city of Stevens Point, maybe that cuts savings. Has there been an option to cut service, and then now the Stevens Point Fire Department is no longer what it used to be?
So when it comes to cutting services, and that's why I wanted to make sure I added that slide in the presentation to show that 80+% of our calls are in the city of Stevens Point. And with us providing the auto aid and the mutual aid and through MABUS, we in return get a lot of resources and a lot of bang for our buck. And I will show you again when we talk about the chief's report. You will see in the chief's report under Continuum, just this month in January, we requested in 6 times resources to the city of Stevens Point. We only went out once with 1 apparatus. And when we request those in, a minimum of 3 apparatuses are coming, if not 6. So there is, to reduce those services with our mutual aid and auto aid partners, I don't feel is viable or credible. I think that does a disservice to our community and our community members and what we're going to be able to provide as a service. I think there are some options on the table of what we provide when it comes to the quality assurance and the risk reduction and the prevention aspects and the pub ed. But again, I don't want to limit those things either for our community.
I don't think anybody's asking you to do that. And I'm just saying that we have been brought an issue, and we have been brought one solution to that issue, and that's what you're asking us for right now. I can't, in good judgment, go along with that without looking at other options and figure out if there's a better way to solve this problem. And I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed citywide. This is something that the mayor really needs to look into and research, because this is not, obviously your input is vastly important because you are the chief of that department, but this is going to affect every department in the city of Stevens Point, along with every community member. This may end up being the right answer. I don't know, but we haven't looked at it. Maybe you have, but this is the first you're bringing it to us. That's all I'm saying.
No, it's I agree with Commissioner Moore is saying. I mean, that is my concern out of this. I would rather have had conversations auguring down on exactly what we are looking at position-wide. I know, again, people could look at this and see a screen and we're talking about 9 firefighters and that's what we're funding, but we're not having that conversation about 9 firefighters. We're just looking at funding, but we're using 9 firefighters as, I guess for a lack of better terms, a bookmark of how much that's going to cost. We have not had that conversation. I would have liked to have had that beforehand before we went down this path of looking at a referendum. That's nothing to take away from a referendum, and as I said earlier, I support you in that process, but there's questions that I would hope a finance committee and council would ask before we move forward, and I hope, addressed issues enough that taxpayers out there are going to have answered before they vote on it. But I do have concerns on those outlying costs that are not identified yet at this point, and consider, in particular, very extensive capital requests that I can't imagine are going away. If they're in need last year, are they going to be a more pressing need, critically in nature, if we move forward on this, and how many extra personnel are added? But I certainly don't dispute or argue what you have presented here on the need of those positions. I would just like to have gone through, in my opinion, the appropriate process to identify that before we move to this point. And again, I qualify that by saying that is my opinion.
How many of the other departments that you used as comparables, how many of them meet the NFPA standards?
At this time, all but one of those other departments meet those standards.
How are they able to do that and Stevens Point is not?
It's a good question. It's been a question for many chiefs prior to me and having those conversations when it comes to the operational budget, funding of those positions, and how we move forward with those things.
I know Wausau they just did a referendum up there last year and hired 12 new members, something like that.
They actually hired more than that. They hired some through a referendum. They hired some through a SAFER grant, and they also hired some through the funds that they received back through shared revenue.
So they meet all the minimum man requirements by the NFPA?
Currently, at this time, all of their apparatuses are running a minimum of 3. Some are running 4. Some are running 4 per apparatus.
So either you said they meet the minimums, and if they're running 3, you're saying we're running 3 and we don't meet them.
We're not running 3.
What are we running?
2.
We're running 2. All right, but 3 meets it?
3 does not.
So how can you tell me a minute ago that they're meeting the minimum manning?
Those departments, some of their apparatuses are staffed to the 1710 compliant of 4, not all of them.
Okay, so they don't meet it either, not all the way from every appliance they send out doesn't meet it?
Correct.
Okay, do we have any in our fleet right now that meet it?
No.
Okay.
Even with this, there will be none that'll meet the standard.
Okay.
And from my standpoint, I hear both of you, what you are saying about this is a city issue. From my standpoint, and this is as a taxpayer, as a business person, I don't know what's more important in the city than the police and the fire and the EMS. Having said that, I don't see, and I'm not talking about the police here, I'm talking about other departments, and I'm not going to name them because I'll hear all about it at another time. A lot of those departments are not nearly as important as the commission that we're sitting on here. And if any of them have come forward, then come forward. You need more people? Come forward. We have someone that's a chief that is coming forward and saying this is a solution. And again, I'm not disagreeing that this could have a ripple effect through the city, but we have one personnel head that is trying to make a difference in their department, instead of just some of them that I hear that are whining and complaining, and I'm short-staffed, and oh, I don't have the money, and oh, we're getting a 0% increase. There's a department head sitting to my left that is actually trying to make a difference and do something about it. And if that has a ripple effect through the rest of the city, then so be it. But to me, there's nothing more than police and fire for the citizens of this city.
I just want to clarify, I don't want to say it's opposition, is not on the increase of personnel. I didn't like the process. I wish we would have had a conversation so we didn't have to do this. We could have had a conversation beforehand, in depth, to identify that personnel. And like I said, who's to say it wouldn't have been more? I don't know.
Sure.
You know, even what we're talking about, it may have.
And
I do dispute the point, though, when we're looking at other departments, obviously the police department, but within the city, I feel this will be a precedent set, and I get it. I admire the chief has stepped forward on this and support that process, but to think, to be naive to think this will not have a precedence within the city if this moves forward and is successful, I think we would be foolish to think that way. And what is the impact when we basically, in short, bypass people that we elect into these positions to make this decision, and all those decisions go to referendum? Now, okay, I guess, you know, streets department needs 5 new people out, you know, plowing the roads.
Guys to pick up your garbage.
They're not gonna, you know, get that. Corey isn't gonna open the wallet, so let's go to referendum. Again, not saying that's gonna happen, but I think we need to look at that, and we need to understand what that, you know, potentially could look like 5-10 years down the road. But I in no way want you to feel I do not support that. I just don't support the process.
All of us are on this commission because we believe in the police and fire departments, and we know how important they are into this community and every community. So don't try and make it sound like that we don't care or that we don't understand. And trust me, it's not a power trip. I don't need to be the guy that makes the last decision on any of this stuff. But I do like logical decisions, and I do like a logical process. And to me, this process is not being done in a logical manner to take to the public in an honest manner that is clear and forthright, that they can understand and they can vote on without having any remorse or feeling like they're confused or tricked. And I believe honestly that this may not be the right answer, that there's a lot of options out there, and we're being brought one option, and that's the only option we get. And I think we're better than that as a community than to just sit here and do this when we can look at a longer solution. Because the solution right now, all right, let's throw more money at it, let's throw more people at it, is the same thing that every government agency does for every stinking problem nowadays. And it needs to stop. because it doesn't fix anything. We need to be wiser about how we do things. We need to be honest with the people because we all pay into this just like everybody else. And I'm getting sick and tired of everybody coming up from the government saying, we need another dime, we need another this, we need another that. It's getting to the point, I am also on a fixed income. My insurance went up, my car insurance went up, my taxes went up, everything has gone up. The school board's begging for money, you guys are asking for money, everybody is asking for money for everything. There isn't any more. My yearly wage went up by $100 a month this year. My bills have exceeded that by far more. I'm not the only one in this town that lives that way. And I'm not saying it to say, oh, woe is me. I'm giving you the honest truth, the honest evaluation of what is happening. Something's got to give, and I don't know what it's going to be, but we have to make better decisions on fixing these problems for this community, or it's not going to work for any of us. That's all I'm asking from this.
Corey, you got a big task ahead of you.
Yes, he does.
There you go. How about that?
Well, we all do. Chief, I don't know if you need a vote. Do you still want to vote on this, or do you pretty well clear? Yeah, just a second. Let me get an answer first.
I do want to vote either yay or nay in support of the fire department moving forward to next week's finance committee and then in front of the council the following week. I think that as the chief of this department, I think it needs to be transparent that either I have the support from the Police and Fire Commission or not to be able to move forward with this referendum. I think that's very important to show to the council that that I have that or I don't. And
okay, we get it. Mr. Ostrowski.
I just thought two things there. One is I thought it was kind of neat that two council members happen to be in attendance to hear this. So I think it's really good because, yes, I don't think we really, when it comes to money, we really don't have any power on that on the PFC. So I think it's really important. The other thing is I just feel real strongly that I support the chief in the fact that he has the courage to bring this forward. I do know in talking to other people and other departments, and fire department included in the past, they wanted to say something, but they didn't. You know, no idea gets going without somebody taking that first step. Maybe it gets shot down, maybe it continues. I do agree with Tom, we need to look at all kinds of options. But I want to commend the chief for getting this discussion going, because it all starts with some discussion someplace.
Thank you. Mr. Kirschling, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Zenner?
No, I guess to move forward on a vote, which I do agree would be good. I just want to make sure what that language will be that we're moving forward on first before we do a vote on that.
I think, well, I have nothing else to add at this point in time, so if we have a motion on that vote, then we can move forward.
I think it's to move to referendum. So I'll make an approval, Kirschling make an approval for the Stevens Point Fire Department to move forward with a 2024 referendum for 9 additional firefighter paramedic positions.
Okay, everybody heard that? Do we have a second?
Is that what the motion is? That?
No. Well, I guess that's out of order, so I'm just going to say.
Well, if that, well, clear up the motion then. I guess I'm to clear up the motion.
Is that what you wanted to say?
Well, I think
maybe you should ask the chief.
Yeah, I think you're just looking to.
I'm looking for a motion from the commission to support the Stevens Point Fire Department to move forward with a fall referendum for financially supporting 9 firefighter positions within the department.
Mr. Kirschling, is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Third and final time, do we have a second?
I will second that.
We have a second from Commissioner Ostrowski. You've all heard the motion and the second. All in favor of said
Do
motion?
a discussion on that first before?
Sure, go ahead.
My concern is when we identify a number into that, my opinion, we have not gone through the appropriate channels yet to decide what that number should be.
Number pertaining to the
If
number
we're
of
talking 9
personnel.
firefighters, I think that's a conversation that should take place before we even look at a referendum, because that needs to be approved by this body before it moves forward. So
The number becomes important.
the number becomes important. As I said, who knows what that number is going to be? This is all talk my frustration on it. We were not given the authority to have that conversation and decide what that is yet. But that doesn't take away from funding something at this point. We don't know what that is. We can use a benchmark of a number, but moving forward, I would say without identifying, well, can we change the motion, or how does this?
Is the 9?
We have a motion and a second, and
Yeah.
that's, well, we have the motion, it's recorded. That's where it's going to come from.
If we do a motion on that, can we still change that and go forward with a different direction, or?
I
Mike?
wish we had our,
Mr. President?
yes.
I believe under Robert's Rules of Orders, there can be, under discussion, a friendly amendment to that motion.
There could be.
And if
someone would come-
Commissioner Zenner would like to make an amendment to that motion, I believe he would have that right.
If you wanted to, say, make a friendly amendment to take the number out, the number of employees.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to that motion to identify, that we move forward in supporting the fire chief to take his referendum to the appropriate board for a decision to move forward. We are not here to decide, and quite frankly, as I said, we're not even of the decision-making on this.
I really wish the city attorney was here right now.
But I do want to support the chief moving forward to the appropriate body to address this and let the decision-makers make that decision, not us. So
Okay,
that's
why don't-
essentially my motion.
All right, stop for a second. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Do you want to remove your motion?
Why don't I remove my motion and we'll,
Does the second agree to that?
I will agree to that.
Okay,
And
that motion is taken care of and no longer exists. I think this is the right way to do it. I'm not 100% positive. We don't have a parliamentarian here, so oops. Okay, so if we have no motion on the floor,
I'd like to make a motion.
okay.
okay,
I would like to make a motion to authorize the fire chief to take his planned referendum forward to the authorizing body as appropriate,
I don't know
i.e.
what
the
that.
Finance Committee. Finance Committee, correct?
Yes. And council.
Did you mention referendum in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So what
Would
is
that
that motion now?
Would you include additional personnel we'll see what that is?
We don't know what that is yet. We haven't had that discussion, so. I would say
See,
a motion
all right.
for the fire chief to take the
concept.
identified referendum to the Finance Committee for the appropriate vote.
You're taking the concept, not a specific number.
Yes.
All right, hold on. This is why I make the big bucks, right? Yeah. Oh, my Lord.
Jerry, you're the expert.
Well, I'm trying to remember it's been a long time since I've been in this kind of a situation with this kind of parliamentarian question going on. It doesn't happen that often. And I didn't happen to bring my Robert's Rules of Orders with me.
Well, the motion was withdrawn, the second was drawn. Zenner made a motion to,
Correct. Yeah, I get all of that.
yeah, and so we
And-
need a second on that?
Yes. If he's happy with the way he's made his motion, that's because people have.
Did you write it down?
See, that's the question. Is it written down?
No.
No.
Is it
Okay.
recorded?
Well,
Yes.
it's recorded. She'll
Okay.
go through it and find it later. But
Yeah.
I can say it again,
say it again. would
whether
be
it
the
matches
best.
up verbatim, but
Say it again, and this
I would
is-
like to make a motion to authorize the fire chief to take his identified referendum forward to the appropriate voting body, Finance Committee.
Yeah, that's where I have the problem, is that you're shortchanging because it's going to have to go to finance and to council. And this is why I'm having a big problem with this, because we don't even actually have to vote on this at all. This is a non-actionable item, because we're not voting to approve anything other than support of the chief moving forward with his referendum question. And I think that instead of even doing a vote in a formal manner, because it is a big bucket of mean nothing in some ways.
I would
That
like to show the
if-
support of the commission or the denial of the commission.
Well, I understand what you would like. I don't know if we can possibly do that in a legal manner, is what I'm saying, because we are an official body. And what we're voting on is a non-official act.
But we're voting,
You
we
could make,
vote on a lot of non-official acts.
you could make a simple, straightforward motion of, we support the chief moving forward with this. But that doesn't really say anything either, because moving forward doesn't define anything. I'm not trying to be difficult here. I
think
don't know
Zenner's
the
moving
answer.
forward with the with his proposed referendums to the appropriate committees would be a
To the
show of support.
appropriate committees, that could be,
Appropriate bodies of government. I don't know what the right word is.
see, that's the problem, is the wording is not correct yet. Because you can't say to the appropriate body, singular, finance committee, because then it stops and dies.
Body and
right
or
there.
bodies.
Well,
In the event it needs additional bodies.
Corey, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you have anything to add to this mess?
I believe it-
Seems that you are close to the parliamentarian, perhaps?
Committees and council.
Committees and council.
So it'd go to committees and council. That's.
So under state statute, the referendum would need to be approved by the governing body, which would be the city council. So basically, the original intent was for this to go to finance. Finance is advisory to council, and then it would go to the common council. So, you know, I think, yeah, if you could say, I mean, I think to say finance committee and common council, or, you know, the appropriate governing bodies, I think either one of those would work, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
You got that?
I think so.
One more time.
I haven't seen this in city government in about 8 years, 9 years?
It's been a while.
Now, do I need to rescind that,
Or
or?
just state,
Okay.
state your, because you
I move to make a recommendation that the fire chief move forward with his proposed referendum to the appropriate governing body,
S, plural.
Z. Government bodies.
There you go. Do we have a second?
I'll be happy to second that. I'm figuring it out, but I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anyone need the motion repeated? Does anyone have any comments or questions? This part we can get right. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries. We are done with that agenda item. Moving on to agenda item number 11. No, number 12.
Yep.
It is the update on the auto aid agreement with the Rudolph Fire Department. Chief, what's your update?
Update with the auto aid agreement between the Rudolph Fire Department and Stevens Point Fire Department has been signed by everyone. It has been logged with the PFC. It has been logged with Rudolph Fire Department and has also been logged with CommCenter. And just to let everybody know, we have already used that agreement in the city of Stevens Point since it's been put in place and is working very well. So thank you for the support in that. And then,
Is that the end of that agenda item, sir? That's the
Yes,
finish
sir.
of your update. Thank you very much. Is there any questions on that? No, seeing none. Moving on to agenda item number 13. We have the fire chief's report, EMS report. It says Chief Lasky.
it does. So a few things with our report. As you can see in Continuum, our calls just continue to climb. This year, we're already up 53.33%. We've responded to 56 additional calls for the month of January compared to last January, and the projections are showing that the department will be up another 672 calls in 2024. As you can see on the next page, also when we talk about those mutual aid requests versus the mutual aid given to the city of Stevens Point, we have received mutual aid 6 times in the month of January for structure fires, and we have given aid once. Lastly, I'd like to point out 2 large events that happened this past month that I wanted to just praise the men and women of the Stevens Point Fire Department for. We had a nursing home fire and an apartment complex fire, and they did a fabulous job on stopping the fire from spreading and the fire suppression and attack. They saved millions of dollars during that process, and I just wanted to be able to point that out. Also, Recruit Academy Class 2401 with the 4 new hires that started January 8th will be graduating this Friday. And I would like to invite everyone to attend that graduation. It'll be at 15:30 in the afternoon at the Stevens Point Fire Headquarters. Also, we had a Lieutenant Matt Zander, complete the Alabama Smoke Diver School, which is a very grueling program, a 1-week program that has a large dropout in the program, and really truly betters the department, and he bettered himself by doing this. And I know you saw Chief Lasky on the heading. We had partnered with Columbia Southern University and Mid-State Technical College to bring one of the who's who from the fire service to Stevens Point. Chief Lasky and Chief Salka, if you've been around the fire service, you know the names. I have actually seen both of them speak in person out at FDIC, and they are very inspiring and very recharging to the battery and the fire service. I felt it was appropriate to send our company officers to one of the programs and our chief officers to the other. Both of those programs did not end up happening. They needed a minimum of 50 people to be in attendance in order to have a profit, and Columbia Southern was not willing to take a loss, so we had to cancel both of those programs. Instead, though, I did reach out to Chief Lasky and talk to him multiple times and asked him to come and actually give a presentation here in Stevens Point anyways. Talking about pride and ownership in the fire service and for the love of the job, and re-energizing our people and talking about leadership and culture. I think it's really important that our members hear from people like this. I've reached out and asked for many sponsorships, and those sponsorships have really come through. Conway Shields, Red Power, the Portage County Chiefs Association, and you know, many others have really stepped up when it's really come to that. McQueen, who we purchased our SCBAs through, and it's important that we give back to our members. Also, in the EMS report, I wanted to show, again, like I talked about during the presentation, you will see that last year at this time we had 5 requests for Med 3 to be out at the same time. We had 2 other units out. This last month alone, that was up to 12. And so our numbers continue to go up. Lastly, I would just like to point out and recognize Battalion Chief Victor Kudrowski for, he has been working on a Focus on Energy program and updating the lights at Station 1, working with Corey and myself. And we are gonna see, just on the installation process, we're gonna see between $400 and $4,600 kickback with that program. And we are going to see within the first month of using this new system a reduction in our energy bill at Station 1 of up to 60%. So I'm really looking forward to this program being completed. I again want to just thank BC Kudrowski for stepping up to the plate and taking care of that, and Corey for supporting us through that endeavor. It's important that we move forward and we again evaluate what we're doing for the taxpayers and try to give them the best bang for the buck. Lastly, I know agenda item 11 was very long in discussion, but I just appreciate the support from the commission, and I look forward to hearing from all of you and the feedback you have to be able to polish this and taking it forward next week to the Finance Committee and the following week to the Common Council for the vote. So thank you.
Do we have any questions on the report from the chief?
I'll make a motion to accept it and put it on file.
Okay, we have a motion. Second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Agenda item number 14. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.